The sun rose over Earth, casting long shadows across the planet's surface. No one knew that this day would mark the beginning of a new chapter in human history. The Galactic Empire, a vast and powerful civilization that controlled hundreds of planets, had set its sights on Earth. They viewed the planet as a tiny, insignificant speck in the vastness of the universe, nothing more than a primitive world ripe for conquest. Their decision was swift and confident. Earth was no threat to their empire. But they couldn't have been more wrong. A fleet of enormous warships, capable of devastating entire cities with a single strike, entered Earth's atmosphere. Their sleek, metallic bodies gleamed in the light of distant stars, and their advanced technology hummed with power. The Empire's commanders, seated in their grand command centers aboard their flagship, looked down on Earth with nothing but disdain. They had no reason to believe that anything on this primitive planet could pose a serious challenge. Humanity, after all, was still new to the stars and had barely scratched the surface of space exploration. The first wave of Empire forces was sent to Earth's largest city, expecting to crush any resistance in a matter of hours. The city, with its towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, seemed like an easy target. The Empire's soldiers were clad in armor so advanced that it seemed almost invincible. They landed in the city square, their ships opening like flower petals, revealing their fearsome warriors. With a single command, they began to march forward, their weapons raised, prepared to destroy anything that stood in their way. What they didn't know was that Earth's defenders, although outnumbered and outgunned, had been preparing for this day for years. Governments, scientists, and military leaders had been working in secret, aware that something was coming. Humanity had not just been standing idly by. In their deepest underground bunkers, they had developed technologies based on their most ambitious scientific theories. They had been waiting for the day they would face an enemy much larger than themselves, and they were ready. As the Empire's soldiers moved through the city, humanity's defenses clicked into action. Hidden deep within the streets were automated turrets and advanced drones, designed to blend into the environment. The first few Empire soldiers fell before they even knew what had happened. The sound of blaster fire filled the air as explosions rocked the streets. The Empire's troops, stunned and disoriented, fought back with fury, but Earth's fighters were relentless. They fought with everything they had, fear and desperation fueling their actions. The citizens of Earth didn't just retreat, they fought. Civilians who had no military training took up whatever weapons they could find, determined to defend their homes. The Empire, used to overwhelming force and quick victories, had never seen anything like this. Humans weren't running, they weren't hiding. They were standing their ground, no matter the cost. This was no ordinary species. The fight wasn't just about survival, it was about protecting everything they had built, everything they loved. The battle raged on for hours. Earth's defenders didn't give up, and the Empire's soldiers began to realize that their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers weren't enough. The humans were everywhere, fighting in ways that the Empire hadn't anticipated. They set traps, outmaneuvered their enemies, and fought with the ferocity of a species determined not to be wiped out. The Empire's fleet in the sky was still confident, but their ground troops were beginning to falter. In the heart of the battle, a young woman, a soldier named Sarah, stood firm against a towering Empire officer. He was unlike the other soldiers, larger, stronger, and more advanced in every way. His armor gleamed with a bluish hue, and his eyes glowed with an unsettling light. He raised his weapon, aiming to strike her down, but Sarah was quick. With a precise move, she dodged his attack, and in a flash, she thrust a homemade explosive device into the officer's chest. It detonated with a deafening blast, sending him sprawling to the ground. For a moment, there was silence. The Empire officer, stunned by the power of the human strike, struggled to move. Sarah's heart raced as she watched the battle unfold around her. The Empire had thought they could conquer Earth with ease, but now they were seeing that humans were not to be underestimated. Every soldier who fell, every defensive maneuver that worked, pushed back the Empire's forces just a little more. As the day wore on, the Empire's strategy began to crumble. They had underestimated the Earthlings' ability to adapt, their courage to stand and fight. It wasn't just their technology that surprised the Empire. It was their will to survive. The Galactic Empire, with all its power and might, had never faced a force like this. They had thought Earth was a weak, unprepared species, but they were wrong. Human nature, their relentless drive to survive, to protect, to fight, was far stronger than the Empire had ever imagined. The Empire's fleet hovered overhead, waiting for a signal from the ground forces to launch their next attack. But it was clear that the battle was not going in their favor. The commanders in the flagship were starting to panic. The humans had something they didn't understand: a heart, a spirit, a will to never back down, no matter the odds. And as the battle wore on, it became increasingly obvious that the Empire was losing. They couldn't understand how a species so primitive could fight back with such determination. In the final moments of the first encounter, as the last of the Empire's soldiers retreated, the human defenders stood victorious. Earth had not been defeated. It had not fallen as the Empire had predicted. The Galactic Empire's commanders sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the failure that had just unfolded before them. This was not the quick and easy conquest they had expected. This was a war they had started, and now it was a war they would not easily win. As the smoke cleared and the sun began to set over Earth's cities, the human defenders realized something profound. They had proven to the galaxy and to the Empire that Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. They had shown that, no matter the odds, humans would fight to the very end. The first encounter was over, but it was only the beginning of what was sure to be a long and difficult battle. And the Galactic Empire, now fully aware of the strength of Earth's defenders, would never again underestimate humanity. The Galactic Empire had made a fatal mistake. After their unexpected defeat in the first encounter with Earth's defenders, they had underestimated humanity's true strength. The battle had been fierce, and though they had been forced to retreat, the Empire's commanders remained confident that they would crush Earth's resistance. What they didn't know was that humans had a secret, a weapon far beyond anything the Empire could imagine. For years, hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth, the greatest minds of the planet had worked in silence, developing a technology so powerful, so dangerous, that it could change the course of the entire war. In the heart of Earth's most secure military base, a team of scientists and engineers worked tirelessly. The base was buried far underground, shielded from any prying eyes. Only a select few knew of the weapon's existence. Its creation had been a secret project, known only to a handful of leaders and top military officials. The weapon was not just a tool of destruction, but a force capable of reshaping the very fabric of the galaxy. It was called the Soul Forge. The weapon was designed to harness the planet's core energy and convert it into a raw, unthinkable power that could not be defeated. But the Soul Forge had another purpose. It was not only a weapon of immense strength, but also a symbol of humanity's resilience. Their refusal to give in, no matter the odds. The Galactic Empire licked its wounds and prepared for a second assault on Earth. They failed to notice the signs of something far more dangerous being unleashed. Earth's defenders, already battle-hardened from the previous clash, were gathering in secret, preparing for the Empire's inevitable return. The Soul Forge, once fully activated, would become humanity's final card, a card they would play when the time was right. But activating it was no easy task. It required the energy of the planet itself, drawing power from the Earth's core, something that had never been attempted before. If it succeeded, it would change everything. If it failed, it would destroy the entire planet. Days turned into weeks as the scientists and engineers worked around the clock. The Empire's forces were beginning to regroup, sending reinforcements to Earth's orbit, unaware that their next strike would be their last. The political leaders on Earth had been preparing for the worst, but none knew how truly dangerous the weapon they had developed could be. In the final stages of its activation, a single mistake could bring about Earth's destruction. But there was no turning back now. Humanity's fate rested on the success of the Soul Forge. On the surface, the world seemed calm, almost peaceful. The Empire's fleet, which had once hovered over Earth, was now retreating, but only temporarily. The Empire was not known for backing down for long. It wasn't just Earth they wanted to conquer, it was everything. In the military headquarters, General Marcus stood before the war room table, his face tense as he studied the data before him. He knew that time was running out. The Empire's fleet would be back soon, and when they arrived, Earth would be the target of their wrath. The Soul Forge had to be ready. General Marcus had been one of the few who knew of its existence, and he understood the power it held. He knew the risks, but he also knew that without it, humanity didn't stand a chance. His mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. He had seen the Empire's power firsthand, and he knew that the only way to defeat them now was with something beyond their wildest imagination. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Earth's surface, the activation process was reaching its final stages. The massive underground facility hummed with energy as the Soul Forge began to draw power from the planet's core. The enormous machines surrounding it groaned with the strain of the immense energy they were channeling. Scientists monitored the progress from a nearby control room, their eyes glued to the screens. Sweat beaded on their foreheads as they adjusted the controls, careful not to make a single error. One wrong move, and the entire planet could be ripped apart. Outside the facility, Earth's military was preparing for the inevitable. Soldiers were being stationed across the world, their weapons ready, their hearts pounding with the knowledge that they were about to face the greatest challenge of their lives. Some had heard rumors of the Soul Forge, but few knew its true capabilities. All they knew was that they had to hold their ground, no matter what came next. The countdown continued. General Marcus gathered with the top military leaders in the command center. His voice was calm, but there was a weight to it that could not be ignored. "This is our last chance," he said. "The Soul Forge is our only hope. If we can't stop the Empire now, we will never get another opportunity. They will wipe us out without hesitation." His words were met with grim nods from the other officers, who had all witnessed the power of the Empire firsthand. They had lost so much already. But they weren't going to lose Earth, not without a fight. Then, without warning, the alarms began to blare. The Empire's fleet had returned. Their ships appeared in the sky, massive and menacing, blotting out the sun. The time had come. The battle for Earth's survival was about to begin. But this time, humanity had a secret weapon. The Empire's ships descended toward Earth's surface. They were met with an unexpected sight. A massive beam of energy shot up from the planet's core, streaking through the atmosphere and cutting through the Empire's ships like a hot knife through butter. The beam, powered by the Soul Forge, disintegrated the first wave of attackers before they could even respond. The Empire's fleet, caught off guard, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. The Soul Forge was fully activated, and Earth's defenders had unleashed a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire's fleet, which had once seemed so invincible, was now in disarray. Ships that had once boasted powerful shields were torn apart, their defenses useless against the raw energy emanating from the Soul Forge. The shockwave from the weapons spread outward, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. General Marcus watched in awe as the power of the Soul Forge turned the tide of the battle. This was no longer a fight for survival, it was a fight for victory. But as the Empire's fleet began to retreat, it became clear that the true test of Earth's secret weapon was yet to come. The Empire's commanders would not give up easily, and they would return with everything they had. Earth had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. Still, for the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. The Soul Forge had changed everything. And with it, Earth's defenders had proven that no matter how powerful the enemy, they would never stop fighting. The war between Earth and the Galactic Empire had shifted in an unexpected direction. After the surprise deployment of Earth's secret weapon, the Soul Forge, the Empire's forces had been caught off guard, forced to retreat. But the victory was short-lived. The Empire, with its vast resources and powerful fleet, would not be defeated so easily. They were regrouping, rebuilding, and preparing for a second assault. They now knew that Earth was more dangerous than they had imagined, and they were determined to crush this threat once and for all. General Marcus stood on the balcony of the command center, gazing out at the sky as the first wave of the Empire's ships appeared on the horizon. The victory they had won just weeks ago felt like a distant memory. Now, the weight of the coming battle pressed heavily on his shoulders. The war was about to escalate to levels they had never anticipated. The Empire's fleet was larger this time, stronger, and more prepared. Earth's defenders had no choice but to stand firm, even if they knew the odds were not in their favor. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was tense. Officers moved quickly, relaying orders and coordinating defenses. The sound of alarms echoed through the hallways as the fleet's movements were tracked on large screens. Earth's forces were ready, but they knew that the enemy they faced this time would not be defeated by brute force alone. The Soul Forge had been a game changer, but there was a limit to its power. It had the potential to destroy entire fleets, but it could not sustain that power indefinitely. The Empire knew this, and they had likely found a way to counter it. The stakes were higher than ever. General Marcus turned to the officers around him. His face was grim, but there was a fire in his eyes that spoke of unwavering determination. "We've won one battle, but the war is far from over," he said. "Prepare for what's coming. They'll throw everything they have at us, and we need to be ready." Across the globe, preparations were underway. Every country on Earth, every faction that had joined the fight, was now united in a single cause: survival. The world's military forces were mobilized, soldiers and pilots ready to face the Empire once again. The Soul Forge, the ultimate weapon, remained Earth's last hope, but it was not enough on its own. Earth needed strategy, unity, and above all, the courage to face an enemy that had proven to be nearly unbeatable. As the Empire's fleet descended, their ships stretched across the sky like a storm of metal and fire. Their massive warships blotted out the sun, casting a shadow over the world below. Earth's forces had gathered to meet them, forming a defensive perimeter around key cities and military bases. But it was clear that this time, the Empire was not going to let the Soul Forge dictate the outcome. They had come prepared. The first wave of the Empire's attack hit with terrifying force. Their ships unleashed a barrage of energy weapons that shook the ground beneath Earth's defenders. Cities that had been fortified in the wake of the previous battle now trembled as the weapons slammed into them. But Earth's forces were ready. The military had developed new defense systems, utilizing the technology gleaned from the wreckage of the Empire's first invasion. Shield generators rose from the ground, emitting a protective barrier that absorbed the Empire's energy blasts. However, these shields were not impenetrable. They would only hold for so long. General Marcus watched the battle unfold on a large screen in the command center. His hands were clenched into fists, his mind racing as he calculated their chances. The Soul Forge was operational, but its power was finite. The Empire's fleet was massive, and their firepower was overwhelming. He knew that they couldn't rely solely on the Soul Forge to win this war. Earth had to adapt, evolve, and use every advantage it had. The key was to keep the Empire on the defensive, to force them to react rather than attack. The battle raged for hours. The sky darkened with the smoke of explosions and the flash of energy beams. Earth's forces fought with everything they had, but the Empire's superior numbers and firepower were beginning to take their toll. General Marcus knew they couldn't hold out forever. The Empire was relentless, and they would keep coming until Earth was nothing more than a burned-out husk. But Earth had one thing the Empire couldn't comprehend: the will to survive. In the heart of the battle, a group of elite soldiers, known as the Vanguard, was deployed on a daring mission. Their goal was to infiltrate the Empire's command ship, a colossal warship at the center of their fleet, and disable its core systems. If they could take down the command ship, it would cripple the Empire's ability to direct its forces, giving Earth a fighting chance. The Vanguard, led by Captain Lara, was composed of the most skilled soldiers Earth had to offer. They had trained for this moment, and they knew the risks. Failure meant certain death, but success could turn the tide of the war. Captain Lara's team made their way through the chaos of the battlefield, evading enemy fire and taking down any opposition that stood in their way. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal and the sound of distant explosions. As they neared the Empire's command ship, the intensity of the battle escalated. The warship's defenses were formidable, but the Vanguard had been briefed on the ship's layout, and they knew where to strike. The soldiers breached the outer hull, their weapons blazing as they fought their way deeper into the ship. Each step forward was a step closer to the heart of the enemy's power. Inside the command ship, The Empire's leaders were coordinating their forces, unaware of the threat lurking within their own ranks. The vanguard was getting closer. The tension was unbearable. One wrong move, one misstep, and the mission would be over. Captain Lara could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her. The survival of humanity rested on their success. As they reached the command center, they set their explosives and prepared to make their final move. Back on Earth, the battle continued to escalate. The Soul Forge had been used to strike down several of the Empire's ships, but its power was dwindling. The Empire had adapted, and Earth's defenses were being pushed to their limits. General Marcus knew they had to act quickly. The Vanguard's mission had to succeed, or Earth's only hope would be lost. The explosion inside the Empire's command ship was deafening. The Vanguard had done it. The command ship was crippled, its systems offline, and the Empire's forces were thrown into disarray. Without their central command, the Empire's fleet faltered. The energy from the Soul Forge intensified as Earth's forces fought back with renewed strength. It was a moment of hope, a glimmer of victory in the darkness. But the war was far from over. The Empire would regroup, rebuild, and return with even greater fury. General Marcus knew that the real test had only just begun. Earth had taken a step forward, but there was no telling what the Empire's next move would be. The war was escalating, and only one thing was certain: Earth would fight to the very end. The war between Earth and the Galactic Empire had reached a turning point. After months of fierce fighting, the Empire had grown confident that Earth's defenses would eventually crumble. They had underestimated the power and resilience of humanity, a mistake that would cost them dearly. The Empire had made their move, sending a massive fleet to finish what they had started, expecting the final blow to shatter Earth's resistance. They didn't know that the fatal mistake they had made was not seeing the true strength of Earth's defenders. General Marcus stood at the helm of the command center, his eyes scanning the battlefield on the large screens before him. The sounds of soldiers running, reports being shouted, and alarms blaring filled the room. The tension was unbearable. Earth's forces had been pushed to the brink, but they were not broken. The Empire's fleet, larger than anything Earth had ever faced, hovered above, threatening to wipe out everything in its path. The Soul Forge, the last remaining weapon that could turn the tide of the war, was ready, but Marcus knew it wasn't enough. The true weapon of Earth was something the Empire could never have anticipated: their unwavering will to survive. The first wave of the Empire's ships descended upon Earth with thunderous force. Massive warships with impenetrable shields fired their weapons, sending shockwaves across the planet. Cities trembled under the assault. The Earth's military forces fought valiantly, but their numbers were small compared to the vast might of the Empire. Each blast from the enemy ships felt like a death sentence for millions of innocent lives. But Earth's people had something the Empire lacked: a never-give-up attitude, a fire that burned brighter with every blow they took. But Marcus knew the victory was bittersweet. The war was over, but the cost had been high. Countless lives had been lost, and Earth would never be the same again. Still, there was a sense of relief. The Empire had made their fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to fight back. And in the end, that had been their undoing. The war was over, but the scars of battle still ran deep across Earth's surface. The Galactic Empire, once the dominant force of the galaxy, had been defeated, their fleets scattered, their strongholds shattered. The universe, for the first time in centuries, had witnessed a new force rise from the ashes of what seemed like inevitable destruction. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had not only survived, but had emerged stronger, united, and more determined than ever before. As Earth stood on the precipice of an uncertain future, the question was no longer if humanity could rebuild, it was how they would shape the new world that lay ahead. General Marcus stood on the balcony of Earth's new command center, his eyes scanning the horizon. The scars of war were still visible in the form of smoldering cities and ruined landscapes, but in the distance there was hope. The sun was rising over a world that had been torn apart, but now it was a world on the verge of a new beginning. The war had cost them dearly, but humanity had paid the price with their courage, their resilience, and their unwavering belief that they could overcome anything. For the first time in history, The human race had been tested to its limits, and it had not only survived but had thrived. The enemy had underestimated them, and now the galaxy would never forget the name of Earth. The Galactic Empire had thought of humans as mere ants, insignificant in the vast expanse of space, but those ants had risen up, outsmarted their conquerors, and shattered the Empire's arrogance. As sun rose, so did a new era for humanity. Earth was no longer just a small planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. It had become the symbol of hope, a beacon that illuminated the potential of all life in the galaxy. The people of Earth were no longer afraid of the vastness of space. They had stood up to the greatest military power in the universe, and had come out on top. Now, the question was how they would use this newfound power and influence. In the command center, General Marcus was joined by Captain Lara, who had been one of the key leaders during the war. Her team had infiltrated the Empire's flagship and delivered the virus that had crippled the Empire's forces, ensuring victory. But despite the glory of their triumph, there was no time to rest. Earth was faced with the challenge of rebuilding, not just physically, but socially, politically, and technologically. The war had united humanity in ways that no other event in history had, but now the question was how they would use this unity to shape their future. Lara looked at Marcus, her face a mixture of determination and concern. "General, the people are ready. They believe in the new world we're about to build. But there are still threats out there. The Empire might be down, but there are others who may try to fill the power vacuum we've created. We can't afford to be complacent." Marcus nodded, his expression solemn. "I know. But we've come too far to let fear control us now. The war taught us one important lesson. We have the power to shape the galaxy, but we must do so carefully, wisely." Lara agreed. "The future of humanity is in our hands now. We can either rebuild and strengthen our alliances, or we can fall into the same traps that brought us to war in the first place. We need to make sure that the mistakes of the past are never repeated." Outside, the first new ships of Earth's fleet took off from the launch pads. They were different from the ships that had once defended the planet. These ships were symbols of a new age, not just of defense, but of exploration, diplomacy, and growth. Earth was no longer a planet living in the shadow of fear. It was stepping into the light of its own destiny. But even as Earth's people celebrated their victory, there were whispers of something more. Deep in the outer reaches of the galaxy, beyond the borders of the Empire, unknown forces stirred. There were still those who remembered Earth as the small, fragile planet that had once been vulnerable to the Empire's might. These forces had not forgotten the defeat, and they had not forgiven. They were waiting for the right moment to strike, to test humanity's newfound power.